Last session we had gone through some painting options like projection of a face, and this session will go through the projection of a whole body. Let's open a file. I have a file over here. Now what we'll do is we'll project the map, or I can say project a texture for the whole body. Very first of all, I'll just go to the paint tools. I'll import a stencil. As I told in the last session, you can just click over here. You can add a stencil, or I have a stencil over here. Click on the stencil. I got a stencil. I can rotate the stencil. S and left mouse click to rotate to move the stencil. S and middle mouse button to move the stencil. Let us place the stencil in a proper form. I can place it over here. Okay. Let's take a projection tool. Take a new layer. As I explained you, I need to paint on what? I need to paint on diffuse. So I'll take a channel called diffuse channel. Click OK. Reduce the strength to 35. Increase the size of the brush and start painting. Start painting the texture. Reduce the size of the brush. You can see. You can shift the model up. Shift the texture up a bit. Now you start painting on that particular part. You can see I'm painting the projected texture on the mesh or particular geometry. Start working accordingly and work it out. Reduce the size of the brush again. Shift the texture. Rotate the mesh. I can paint a texture. I can increase the size of a brush. I can paint over here on the left hand side. As my mirror is on, so I don't need to paint on both the sides. You can see the projected part over here. Press Q again. Increase the size of the projected texture. You can place it out this way. Reduce the size of the brush. Start working accordingly. Come to the back side. I need to paint on the back side. What I can do is I can activate this texture over here also. If I have a back part, you can see the back part over here. You can scale the texture, scale the mesh accordingly with this texture, with the help of texture, and you can start painting it on the back too. You can see the texture paint on the back side. Start working out accordingly and just projecting the texture in such a way will affect the whole body. Should affect in a very proper form. Just come to the bottom, shift the texture up, start painting. As I want as a skin texture. So this whole is a skin texture. So I'm painting in this way. You can see some part of it. Press Q again. I need to shift this at the bottom too. I want to paint it over here also. The same stuff, same part. Can use a bit this way. Now what I do is, I'll use a tool called burn tool. A burn tool. What is the use of burn tool? Burn tool darkens the current paint layer. For example, if I want to darken this surface, or I can say a current paint layer, what I can do is I can use the burn tool. I can work with this burn tool. Burn a bit to give a proper type of a skin pattern. You can see this, and give a pattern. Burn a bit, not much. Start working accordingly. For example, if you are using much, then what will happen is it will look like a patch. I don't need to see a patch. Don't want to see a patch. I just want to paint in a very normal way. You can see the painting it. You need to give a bit of burns. Not much, a bit. Now you can see the part which I have painted. There is one more tool. For example, if I need to paint erase, if I need to erase these things, I can even erase this stuff. I can even erase that particular painted part. I can erase this painted part using this paint erase option. You can easily erase that particular part. For example, if I painted this on this layer, I can easily erase it. Whatever. For example, if I want to erase the face part, I need to go on that layer and I have to use that paint erase option. So paint erase will erase that particular part. So paint erase is very useful to erase the paint, but make sure you're working on different layers, so it will help you out to work accordingly. I have an eyedropper tool. Eyedropper tool is usually used to pick up the color. For example, I want to pick this color. If I go take a new layer, if I start painting on it, you can see the selected color and this paintbrush. This is just because of this eyedropper tool. I can pick that particular color. I can take a new layer. If I want to reduce the strength, and I can easily paint on that particular part. Just delete this layer. I don't need this layer. Airbrush tool. Airbrush tool is usually used. For example, if I have eyedropper tool, I select this color and I'm using this airbrush tool. Airbrush tool applies the current color into the model in a spray form. For example, if I want to apply a paint or a texture or a color on the model in a form of a spray, I can use this airbrush. I can use this airbrush tool. Airbrush tool is very helpful. You can see in the form of spray, not in the form of paintbrush. Paintbrush seems like this, and if I use this airbrush, seems like this in a form of a pressure. So airbrush will affect in the form of the pressure. Pencil tool. Pencil tool is usually used to create some light marks. For example, if I want to create some mark, if I select a color, if I select light orange color, any spots or any marks if I want to create, I can easily create using this. Can off this, can just use this pattern. You can take this, select the pencil tool, increase the size of it, can use this details, reduce the size of the size of the brush and reduce the strength also. Can use this very rough form. See this will help you out, right? So pencil will work act like as a pencil, like a very thin, not as a brush, a very thin stroke. Let's undo this part. Okay, I'll take a new layer. Right now, what I need to do is I want to use the clone tool. What is the use of clone tool? Clone tool copies paint from one part of a paint layer to another. For example, if I want to clone something, I clone this part, I want to clone it over here. It will apply that path from here to here. This is the use of this tool. If I want to apply the clone, if I want to apply this paint layer to be affected, just come to this layer. It will copy that particular texture and it will paint on that different part. This is the use of clone tool. Right now I have a dry brush tool. It always paints only on the raised cracks of the model, leaving cracks and crevices untouched. For example, if I taking a new color, if I'm taking a color as red, if I'm using a dry brush. So if I'm using a dry brush, I reduce its strength to 45. If I'm using it, take a dry brush, take a new layer. Can you see this? It's painting over here. But if I press Control, it will only paint in the cracks. Can you see it? It will only paint in the cracks part. It won't paint on the top. But if I release Control, then it will paint overall, but it won't paint in the cracks. This is the only difference. So if I want to paint any texture into the cracks, I can use this dry brush tool. If I want to only paint on the overraised parts, at that time also I can use this dry brush tool. The dry brush tool will help me to paint on the overraised parts also and on the cracks part also. Press Control, it will paint in the cracks. The next tool we'll see is the blur tool. What is the use of blur tool actually? The blur tool will blur that particular texture. If I want to blur the texture, I can easily use this blur tool. Example of this blur tool, for example, I want to blur the surface. You can see the blur affecting this mustache part. It will affect the particular. I can increase the strength so it would be easy for me to understand. Use this blur tool. The particular part will be blurred up to blur the texture. It will blur the corners or the edges. Want to blur it. And see this effect of blur being affected on this object. Take a new layer. Work with the diffuse again. There is a tool called dodge tool. Dodge tool brightens the current paint layer. For example, if I have painted on this object, increase the size. If I want to brighten that surface, can you see? It will increase the brightness. Reduce the strength, it will increase the brightness of that current paint layer. Can you see this? Increase the brightness. I want to apply a bit of bright effect on the particular part. to be highlighted, I can use this brightness tool. Brightness tool will help me for achieving that kind of output. Right. Press shift, it will give me a smooth effect. Press shift, give me a smooth effect. The dodge tool is used for getting a brightness on that particular part. You can even work on the highlights part, midtones part, shadows part, and all. If I click on all and the exposure level, how much exposure I want? I need exposure on all the parts, on highlights, midtones, shadows. I need on all, so I can keep at on all, so I can affect it. I can increase the strength, so it will affect in that particular way. As I kept the mirror option on, so it will affect both the sides. So in this way, you can easily work out with the help of this dodge tool. Contrast tool increases or decreases the contrast of that current paint layer. For example, if I want to increase the brightness and contrast for the current paint layer. For example, my texture is looking dull. If I want to increase the contrast, increasing the value, I can use this option. It will help me out to achieve the contrast on that current paint layer. So it would be very easy for me to work. Reduce the size of the brush. Reduce the size. You want to achieve this, you can select that particular layer and you can achieve that contrast part on that. Sponge tool reduces or intensifies the color saturation of the color layer. Use it. It will desaturate the current part of that layer, or I can say the painted layer. Can achieve that kind of output, even if I need to use a bit of sculpt. So need a bit of cut, so I can use this pinch tool over here to get a sharp cut over here. You can achieve a sharp cut. Come to the paint tools. There is a tool called, if you go to the pose tools and if you go to the select move tools, translate for moving the object, where you want to move the object. Scale, for scaling the object, scale in what? X, Y or Z, and rotate in which direction, scaling in which direction. From center will scale it uniformly. If I want to select the faces, the only faces where I will paint, I can use the selection of this faces and I can work accordingly. Selection of the whole object, I can select the whole object. Just click outside, select, come to the paint tools, you can work accordingly. There is one more tool. For example, if I have a reference with me, if I have a reference of any object, I can just click over here, open directory, and I can take a reference. Sculpt it. Can take a reference for any object. If I have a reference for any model, I can take a reference. Example, I'll take a reference for this current model. You can see a reference. So I can work out over here with the model, and secondly, if you want to view the reference, for example, you can just go to this image browser and you can easily view the reference from here. Or else what you can do is you can just go to Windows and you can click on this image browser. Click on this image browser, open the directory, go to this desktop, choose this option, go over here and select that particular path or object. See this? Now you can view it side by side. You can work accordingly by viewing the reference accordingly. This way we can work with the projection tools with different paint layers. The next session we will go through some more tools. Till then, thank you.